right, welcome to TalentED, where we're going to share some stories and insights from professionals making a difference in their fields. And today, we have a special guest, at least special in my heart, because we have a former Gopher here, who's going to discuss something that they are passionate about and share some experiences and insights with us. So, I want to welcome Dr. Tommy Watson to TalentED. Dr. Tommy, why don't you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, your location, anything that we need to know.
Absolutely. Dr. E, it's a pleasure to connect with you. We're becoming newfound friends. So love the work you're doing in Minnesota as well. As you mentioned, Dr. Tommy Watson, my hometown is Denver, Colorado. Former Gopher, go Gophers.
Ski-U-Mah.
Right, Ski-U-Mah, that's right. And a former school principal, but a lifelong educator. Love the work that I'm doing, going around the country, showcasing strategies for educators and students and families around the topics of resiliency and motivation, and in particular, leadership as well. So very, very passionate about that, and currently reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, but always always trying to find reasons to go back to Minnesota as well. So,
well, we would love to find a way to get you back to Minnesota, back to the home country here. So you have a really interesting story, and I hope people listen up and listen well to this incredible background that you have and kind of where it's led you. This idea of resiliency and in our students is so important right now. There's a lot of broken happening right now, and any way we can help kids find their path back is so important. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about this idea of resiliency and a little bit more about your story, and give us some background.
Absolutely. You know what, right now, in recent years, one of the things we have really observed in the educational enterprise has been the great teacher resignation, unfortunately. And the root of that is around motivation and resiliency. And a lot of our leaders are missing the boat when it comes to how to motivate our educators, how to motivate our students, and how to motivate our families, which transfers over into resiliency. Therefore, a lot of our students aren't engaged. Our educators are getting burned out and leaving the profession, and a lot of our families just aren't supporting the educational enterprises they've done in the past. So a lot of my work stems from my own personal story, Dr. E, of growing up in Denver, Colorado, with parents who were drug addicts and shoplifters, and they were arrested 121 times by the time I finished high school. So as a kid, I spent a lot of time homeless, foster homes, crisis centers, most motel rooms, bouncing around from place to place. So I had to learn how to motivate myself at a very early age, which transferred over to being resilient, which helped me be very, very successful later on. But that was one of the key elements that helped me rise above those circumstances. And as I said before, it's transferred over to resiliency. And, when I became a school principal in Brooklyn Park of a Title I school, I took a lot of those practices that I had garnered from my own personal journey, took those practices I learned from my doctoral research on looking at motivation and resiliency, and applied them to my school, where we actually ended up having a Title I school of almost 1,000 kids, only had one suspension the entire year, and a highly motivated staff and successful students, and not just students, but also staff as well, and families that were engaged in supporting the educational enterprise. So research shows that, if kids aren't getting the foundational pieces around motivation, and educators as well, it's not going to transfer over to being resilient, because again, we're in a society where being resilient is a very, very necessary and demanding skill that we all must possess, because change happens all the time. We're going to need to constantly be bouncing back from changes. And in the education enterprise, this is built on change. So we have to be able to be resilient to withstand a lot of the things that are taking place in the world and society around us. Yeah.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And if you want to know more, we would love to bring Tommy here to Minnesota to give the more in-depth story of where he came from and how he's overcome that. What an interesting transition from where you were into the principalship. Can you give us a little more background of how did your passion lead you into education and into the principalship?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working with the St. Paul Housing Association before going into the school education. And what we were doing, we were capturing families on the back end, trying to place them in housing after they had been through something traumatic, and putting them on 6-month to a year-long waiting list. And that was devastating, because here we were dealing with families who needed help now. And we had to tell them, hey, we're going to postpone what you need for another 6 to 12 months. And that was heartbreaking for me. So I said, where do I go back to kind of begin the work and prevent as much as possible people getting in these circumstances? So everything went back to education. So of course, I got into the education enterprise, became a school principal. And one of the things I really, really wanted to do was to lead a school where a lot of people were saying, these kids can't do it, these kids can't do it, these educators can't do it. And it was really a blessing to be able to go into the school and support my staff so they can support our students and being the best they can be. And like I said, it was great just to have them and, kind of just become this unit. We became a family at Palmer Lake Elementary School, and one of the most successful schools in our district at the time. It was hard for me to leave the education enterprise to become, to go into consulting and speaking afterwards. But I wanted to make sure that impact was having a lasting effect beyond my school walls and happening around the country, which I've been able to do, and going around the country, making sure that, those foundational pieces of motivation and resiliency are taking place with our students, with our educators, and with our families to build this successful unit so that we can have an education enterprise that continues to thrive here in the United States of America.
Right. Wow. That's such a great message. So, I mean, thinking about your learning and your experiences and motivation and resilience, how did that help you as that principal with those staff and students and families?
Absolutely. Oftentimes when we think about motivation and resiliency, we say, which one comes first? Well, one of the things I tell people is you can't have resiliency without motivation. So there are some practical strategies that I'm not going to give you now, but when you go in, that are very, very necessary. And they have to start with our staff first, because our staff are the ones who are leading our students. And then it transfers over and trickles down to our students, and then transfers and trickles over to our families. But these practices are absolutely instrumental, and they're natural when we talk about sports. Coaches tend to be great motivators.
Yes, they do.
The student who won't participate at all in the classroom can go out to a sports activity outside of school and do everything that they're being asked to do, but won't do it in the classroom. But coaches know these strategies very, very well, and it tends to transfer over to that student being very, very resilient. But it also tends to be transfer over to our educators being very, very resilient as well. And at the end of the day, it helps both our students and educators both be successful. Some of the results of some of the participants who've been participating in the programming, 81% said they had strong relationships with their students. 87% achieved academic growth. And one of the ones that was probably most impressive to me was that 95% witnessed better student engagement, which transfers over to greater student success in our classroom. Because again, if our students aren't engaged, if they aren't connected, if they aren't motivated, whatever you put before them is just simply going to be something that's just going to be a distraction. So we have to tap into those areas first. And sometimes, as educators, we tend to kind of say, oh, those are soft skills. But I'll tell you what, those soft skills are going to be the very, very foundational things that you're going to need to help our kids do the reading, math, science, and everything else. Because if they're not motivated, if they don't know how to be resilient, they're going to have a tough time doing these other things as well. Same thing with educators. If you're not motivated, if you're not resilient, you're going to get burned out. And you're going to do what a lot of educators are doing right now who are leaving the profession. We have a ton of fantastic educators who we need to retain and keep in our system. And we don't want them leaving and going other places. And for a lot of our educators who are leaving the system, they're jumping in jobs. And again, the pay thing is a whole nother conversation. They're going to jobs where they're leaving their passion, unfortunately. A lot of them feel called to work with our kids and our families.
Dr. Tommy, you talk a lot about coaches. Do you have a soft spot for a favorite coach in your past?
I do. My head football coach at the University of Minnesota was Jim Wacker. Man, he was an amazing coach, amazing motivator. So anybody who remember Jim Wacker at the time knew he was a great motivator. Just a great guy. He was a consistent guy. He was a guy who loved all of his 127 players, and he's a guy who I often quote when I go places today, along with my high school football coach Pete Levine as well. So great instrumental coaches and people who played a tremendous role in my life. Absolutely.
Now, as a true Gopher fan, true Gopher football fan, I would be amiss if I couldn't ask you, do you have a favorite memory from the locker room or from the football field, or maybe there's a marquee win that you want to
Yeah.
bring us back to and tell us the story?
Dr. E, that's a great question there. We were going to Michigan to play against Ann Arbor. I'll try to shorten this story up. And I remember on the plane right there, I told my teammate, because in the past, Michigan had kind of blew us out, and I wanted to get my teammates motivated and pumped up. So I told my teammate, Chris Darkins, who was like our superstar on the team, I said, I'm going to do something before the team, before the game, and I just need you to follow our lead. So we're in Ann Arbor playing in front of 110,000 fans. 1 minute before we go on the field, and I remember standing up and I asked the team, I said, who's ready to play? Maybe a couple guys out of a room of 125 guys said they're ready to play. I'm like, this is not a good sign. So I take one of my teammates off the chair and get him off the chair. And I take his chair, and there's this huge mirror in the locker room of Michigan. And I took the chair and smashed the mirror. Boom. And I turned to my teammate saying, I need you to now get excited, hyped up. So he gets fired up, and instantly the locker room was fired up. We made, and Coach Jim Wacker was usually a mild-mannered guy. We made Michigan go out first before us on the field. So we're in the tunnel with Michigan. We're throwing stuff at Michigan and everything else, and they're sitting there like warriors. They didn't turn around. First half, we go out. I think we're up 6-3 at halftime. So we're pumped up.
Wow.
You know what the score was at the end of the game?
Where's that?
Like 53-6. Michigan.
Wow.
So there's something to be said. Motivation is good, but you can't ride the wave of just emotion to be motivated. You have to do some practical strategies to do it. And then when we came back to the University of Minnesota, I had to actually pay for the mirror. Dollars for the mirror as well. So I only broke a couple more mirrors after that, but that was one of my all-time favorite stories. When I get together with my teammates, we always talk about that, how they say I should have broke another mirror at halftime to kind of get us through the rest of the game. But it was
the rest of the game. We came up a few points short that game.
Absolutely.
Well, Tommy, I have one more section for you, and this is a surprise. This is either or lightning round. Okay,
like that.
I'm going to give you some scenarios, and I want you to tell me who would handle it better.
Okay.
A football coach or a principal?
Good. All right.
Okay, you ready for this one?
Yes.
Who's going to give a more inspiring pep talk?
Definitely the football coach.
Who's going to handle a food shortage crisis?
No
football?
doubt about it. It's going to be the principal.
Principal's got that one. All right. Who's going to have a better sense of fashion to show up? The principal or the coach?
Principals, of course, right? Got it right. Yeah.
Who could get the halls in better shape? If the halls are chaotic, the principal or the school football coach?
That's a tough one. You know what? I want to say the principal. However, coaches usually have that whistle. When that whistle's blown,
true,
order is established. So maybe if we can give more principals whistles, they would win that. Yeah.
The Dr. Tommy Watson principal whistle.
Absolutely. Get the whistle going. That establishes really quickly.
I'm thinking about Icky Woods here. Who's going to have a better victory dance, the high school principal or the football coach?
You know what? I can't say either one of them. They're both horrible dancers. Principals can't dance. Coaches can't dance. You almost have to go to the cheerleaders. So we'll see our Gopher cheerleaders going to probably have the better.
Okay. The Minnesota dance team is top notch.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I got one more. Who's going to curate a more epic playlist? A high school principal or a football coach?
You know what? I'd have to go with the coach as well, because coaches know the motivation. So they're constantly playing music throughout practice.
Perfect.
They have it nailed down. Whereas, principals, they tend to stay away from music because music gets kids riled up. They don't want the kids to get riled up. But in football, sports, you want to get people riled up. So definitely the coaches.
Well, Dr. Tommy, those are great answers. And I think we've had some really good insight from you today. Before we wrap up, do you have any advice or a call to action to any of our listeners or watchers that are interested in resiliency?
Absolutely. Again, I would love to come to your school, support you, whether it be with your students, with your staff or your families, to get at the root of two things, motivation and resiliency. Because again, as educators, we're doing a lot of stuff in our schools, but if you don't have those two foundational pieces in place, all you're simply doing is dragging kids along this journey, trying to get them to participate. So we want to start with those soft skills and making sure that our educators are equipped, our students are equipped, and our families are equipped as well, so we can support the entire education enterprise and make this work. And I'm available whether you're looking at me to come in and speak to students or staff or families. But I recommend doing all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be inspired and get some very practical strategies and research-based strategies to support them and the things they're going to need to do as well going forward. So look forward to working with you. Reach out to me, tawatson.com, or in this case with Dr. Eric, and we'll make things happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Tommy, and thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experiences with us today. It's really been a pleasure having you.
And go Gophers.
And go Gophers. Skayuma. Yeah, I'm still waiting for my Rose Bowl trip. I'm still waiting.
It's coming. I feel it.
Thank you for tuning in and to this episode of TalentED. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And if you have any questions for future topics or guests, please contact us. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and stay PKS, which is positive, kind, and supportive. Bye, everybody.
Take care.